It's quite interesting. I just looked on the Complete University Guide website, and every uni is ranked on entry standards, student satisfaction, research quality, and graduate prospects. But you don't see any ranking for mental health support. So I guess that just shows that for many, many years, obviously universities are judged on the entry standards, the graduate prospects. But if mental health was given more of a importance, that would be in the league tables as well. Because then, university would realise, oh, hang on a minute, if we're getting judged against the standards of mental health, we better invest in it to try and make sure we're good enough, because if mental health support's low, but student satisfaction is high, there's kind of disparity between the two.
Yeah.
And Will, was there any opportunities that you had that you didn't expect at Aston?
There wasn't too much that I didn't expect, but the things that I were expecting were much more extensive and supportive of my studies than I expected. So the two main things in that sense were firstly the placement year that was offered. For those who don't know, Aston University pioneered the entire concept of a placement year. And I think it was something around 70% of Aston students do a placement year. Ironically, I
Wow.
didn't actually do a placement year because I was already on the master's course. I was already on the master's course to try and sort of extend sort of the benefits that I would get from my degree. And I wasn't particularly keen on doing 5 years at university. But I still obviously explored my options and saw what placements are available, saw how competitive it was. In the end, I didn't end up doing one, but I was really shocked at just how many options there were and just how extensive the network of support was in place to get students on a placement year. It just personally didn't suit the route that I wanted to take through university. And then the second, and obviously I'm sure there's more students than I realize who went on a placement year and they absolutely loved it and they got so many benefits from it. And maybe in the future I might think back and go, oh, I wish I did a placement year, but that's just how life works in a way. And then the other thing was the dissertation. Obviously I was expecting to do a dissertation, but again, the same kind of story. I was so surprised at just how many options there were at Aston. There was obviously wet labs and dry labs. You could do like a proper in the lab research project, or you could do sort of a computer-based one. There were so many different options with all of the different sort of sub-departments in the whole life sciences department. I went sort of down the immunology route. So I was working with stem cells and things like that. And the amount of sort of equipment and the opportunities we got while on that dissertation, it was only for 7 weeks, but the amount of things we were able to do, the amount of different types of experiments we were allowed to do, it is what broadened my skills and my capabilities and my knowledge. And the dissertation itself, I really felt the impact of what I learned on my dissertation when doing my exams and when revising for my exams. It really did support my knowledge base. And that made immunology my best grade out of all of my modules. It was always my favorite module, but I really did feel like my dissertation supported the rest of my studies. And yeah, so definitely not necessarily individual opportunities that were provided. Of course, I'm sure there were some available, but obviously the route I was taking, I just wanted to sort of power through the degree in a way. That's kind of what I was aiming for. And yeah, what really surprised me was just how extensive the systems that were in place in terms of supporting students getting on a placement year and getting real value out of your dissertation. And that's definitely something I experienced while I was there.
It's interesting because most people go on a placement to get practical, like learn practical skills, but you seem to have learned practical skills at university instead.
Yeah, so obviously something like biology, it's very kinesthetic. You get a lot of your experience from what you're doing in the laboratory, and that was the main thing for me. Again, why I applied for the masters was this 6-month research project in the master's year is what really appealed to me. Now, a 6-month experience. Obviously, it's not in the workplace. but still gaining so much experience and knowledge. And I'm in a laboratory position today, working full time, and every single day I think I use skills and knowledge that I acquired in the lab at university in my working life now, and I can really feel the benefit of everything I learned there today.
That's really great. Do you think you would have done a master's had there not been a pandemic?
Absolutely, yeah. No, as I mentioned, I plan to do the master's ever since sixth form, sort of the start of sixth form when we first did our UCAS applications. I was like, I want to do the master's degree. I want to leave with a master's, an integrated master's, get it done nice and quickly, stand out from the crowd and get a laboratory position. That was basically my aim all along, and I was never planning on not doing it, basically.
And do you think you'll actually end up doing a master's in the future, or do you think that's now that ship sailed kind of thing?
No, I think it's very, very possible. I think there's one of the main things, especially following the pandemic, something that's really exploded is online degrees and distance learning and things like that. And the company that I work for now are absolutely fantastic in terms of not only supporting funding, but also integrating further learning while you're working. And that's something that I've already emailed my quality manager about, and I'm really interested in exploring. But obviously, still getting used to my job. I've been there about 9 months, and I don't want to rush into anything, so to speak. I'm still learning every day, but it's definitely something that I'm interested in and exploring options for going forward.
Okay. We're just going to talk on mental health. So, IBK, do you think you was given enough mental health support whilst in the pandemic and working remotely?
No, there wasn't much of an opportunity or advertisement for mental health. Anyone going through anything that could lead to like negative mental health at university, it was not really spoken about much. It was more about what's it called, Freshers Week than anything else. So yeah, it does not really get spoken about really, because at university it's more of an isolated journey. So you've gone from sixth form or college into university where there's a wider pool of people to choose friends from. And, it's not like in sixth form or college where you're in a room of 20 people. It could be a room of 10 people, depending on how saturated your subject is. So, for example, I did English literature, which I dropped out of within 5 weeks. But anyway, I did English literature, and in my English literature class, there was just like 6 people in there. There was one teacher to 6. But in maths, when I did maths, which I went on to complete, I was in the class of 20 people. So then you go on to university where you're in a computer science class, and you have 200 students in the lecture room all at once. One teacher can't focus on every single student, but what the university can do is send out emails to say, okay, this is this member of staff, or this is the department you need to contact to get in touch with if you need someone to speak to, or if you need counseling. So, and also to make sure that your information is confidential as well, because when you're going through something that's sensitive, you don't want your information to be out there. Thankfully for me, I had good friends around me, like you guys. I could talk to us and stuff, so I was not really isolated. But to be fair, when I think back, I didn't really go through like any bad periods of depression or anything, because I attach performance to outcome. So if I do well, then I should expect a good grade. But then the flip side of it is, if I feel like I've revised, if I feel like I've spent so much time researching on this exam and trying to get a first, and I don't get a first, then it could affect my mental health. But yeah, I don't think students are given good aftercare, especially students that have gone through exams. There's no support or safety net for students.
Because like you said, you're like kind of scrambling to find who do I contact, who do I message, and it feels like, for me, I think the mental health support in unis is like substandard. So even if you was seeking that support, you'd feel like you're seeing this person for a chat who doesn't really seem qualified, they don't really know what they're talking about, and you just feel like it's kind of a waste of time in a way. That's my opinion on it. And I'm also thinking that I don't think, obviously, when the pandemic came, the universities didn't expect it, kind of thing. And they've created like this online system to like host lectures and things like this. But I don't think they actually thought about mental health. I don't think they actually considered it because they were so busy trying to get this system to work where they can actually give you the courses like digitally. And mental health's come on the like on the back foot kind of thing. Like it's come as a secondary thing rather than equal in importance to the course itself. It's quite interesting. I just looked on the Complete University Guide website, and every uni is ranked on entry standards, student satisfaction, research quality, and graduate prospects. But you don't see any ranking for mental health support. So I guess that just shows that for many, many years, obviously universities are judged on the entry standards, the graduate prospects. But if mental health was given more of a importance, that would be in the league tables as well. Because then, university would realise, oh, hang on a minute, if we're getting judged against the standards of mental health, we better invest in it to try and make sure we're good enough, because if mental health support's low, but student satisfaction is high, there's kind of disparity between the two. It's not going to
Yeah,
add up, People are going to go,
I think
oh,
it's
hang on a minute,
absolutely,
fun. But
it's absolutely something that I think needs to be included on that, because these are the statistics that, when students are applying for university, make their decision upon which university they're going to. Like I said earlier, that location didn't particularly bother me. It was the course that meant a lot to me. But every single person is going to have different wants and needs in terms of where they're going. And universities are essentially advertising themselves to try and get people to come to their university. And I think that that is something that, especially today as well, following something as titanic as a pandemic, is going to be something that a lot of students are really going to value. And I think if, let's say, there's that mental health, if somehow we could quantify mental health support as a statistic on this table, I think a lot of people would turn away from certain universities and turn towards certain universities based on that score. I think it would be a deciding factor for a lot of people, especially if, for example, you have someone who suffers from quite bad depression, or when people are lonely, they struggle really badly, or a whole host of other different things. I think people in that situation especially are really going to value that statistic. And I totally agree, it's definitely something that needs to be included in that going forward, definitely.
Because it could be quite interesting to see, because obviously everyone sees the Russell Group universities as like a massive prestige and like huge reputation. But if these like Cambridge, Oxford are not doing well in terms of mental health support, then universities such as like Warwick, for example, if they did very well with mental health support, they could actually end up being like get a greater level of interest from students rather than the standard top two.
Yeah.
I think we're doing very well in this day and age. We're recognizing mental health as a major factor for an individual to do well, whatever job or sport or whatever part of their lives. We're really doing well, because if you were to go back 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I'm not sure if this discussion would be happening around mental health. I don't know. So it is important to add that factor in terms of the overall league table. I mean, there's still a long way to go. I think universities can do better.
Yeah, I mean, like I knew someone who was seeing a counsellor, and it took them like at least 3 months to even get that support session. And they tend to be just face-to-face discussion with someone. They give you some sheets of paper to fill out, do these exercises, and once the course has run its end, that's it. The service is finished. There's no more aftercare.
It's something that a lot of universities are working on implementing, and they've sort of recently started up this kind of thing, but they themselves are still working out how to run it efficiently and how to run it so that it meets the needs of every single student. And when you have the numbers of students that are going to we're talking tens of thousands of students going to these universities, it's a massive challenge for these universities to be able to give support to everybody. So in my situation, Aston University is comparatively a relatively small university in terms of student intake. It's one of the smaller ones in the country. But in my situation, I'm lucky enough to not suffer from any major mental health issues or anything like that. But pretty much within sort of 2 or 3 weeks of the pandemic starting, I got emails from all the different people you would expect from saying, if you need help, send us an email. You know, here's a phone call you can ring if you need help. Like, the main thing at Aston is a place called The Hub, which is basically if you have a question or a concern regarding anything to do with uni, if in doubt, you can go to The Hub and ask it. So we had them. And then I must have gotten emails from the Vice Chancellor, the head of biosciences itself. I got an email from the Biology Society, which I was a part of as well. Got an email from the Student Council, the Life Sciences section of the Student Council, the accommodation company I was living with. All these people sent me emails going, if you need help, send us an email. If you need help, you can do this, this, and this. I didn't personally use any of the services. I was in a situation where I didn't need to, but I definitely got the option to. I knew that I had many people I could contact if I needed to. So I can definitely vouch for Aston in the sense that they provided the option if you needed it. I can't say anything of the quality of it because I didn't use it. But I feel, back to my original point, I feel like a lot of universities are working on it, but it's not quite up to sort of full speed, you know, in terms of staffing it and in terms of making it as efficient as possible and meeting the needs of every student. I think it's something that's definitely in the works with a lot of universities. It's something that's obviously, mental health is something that's, as Nathaniel mentioned, it's sort of, awareness of it has exploded in recent years, and you know, it's becoming something that's really valued in a lot of communities, and universities is a massive one because we're talking students living away from home, living on their own for the first time in their lives, and many other reasons. And I think it is something that's going to be improving every single year. Universities are going to be working to improve it. But yeah, I think it is something that if we can quantify it in a statistic and put it on the league tables, it's something that I definitely think is seriously worth considering. And I think in some sense, the government could actually get involved in that as well. I think, you know, we have ministers for mental health, we have ministers for universities, we have ministers for education. You know, all of these ministers in the government could collaborate and work out an efficient, effective central system that all students can contact and access if needed. You know, so just as an idea, throwing it out there, I think that's something that, if it received proper funding, could become really valuable in terms of improving university quality of life for students. It would definitely encourage more people to go to university, and it would benefit everyone. Like, all parties would win in that situation, you know.
So if that was to like come to fruition, do you think it would be the universities pushing the government or the government pushing the universities?
I think in a way it would be a bit of both. I think they would sort of work off each other in a little bit. I think obviously the main thing universities would push the government for is money. The main thing the government would push universities for is implementing it quickly and efficiently, which is something for some universities, logistically, that would be very difficult. For some universities, that would be much easier. It depends on what they've got in place and what the staffing situation is like and things like that. But in the wake of a pandemic, when they've got to then work to get people back into university and normalize all of their processes again, implementing is probably the best time there ever has been to implement a new system in. If lots of things have been shut down over the course of a pandemic and students haven't been able to go into university and things like that, surely when they reopen and everything starts to get back to normal, that's the perfect opportunity to create a new normal, if you know what I mean. And I feel like that's an opportunity that needs to be seized, to be honest, because we're now entering the sort of the closing stage of this academic year, and in a few months' time when we're going to be starting the new academic year. And I think it's critical that something like this, among many other changes, are made now, so the opportunity isn't lost, you know, before the normal is back. the new normal should be implemented now. And I think that's something that definitely should be considered for it.
Yeah.
One thing I just thought that I could ask all three of you is, did Coventry, obviously between us, we're using Coventry and Aston. We're almost kind of scrutinizing them in a way, because they're the ones we've had personal experience from. But did Coventry University, throughout your degrees, send you any kind of student survey? And if you can remember, did it include any question to do with mental health?
That's a very good point you raised there, because I've received questionnaires all the time throughout uni on specific courses related to the course material alone, but I've never had any emails questioning whether I was given the right mental health support.
Yeah. See, I'm exactly the same. So we always got surveys at the end of a module. And the survey basically encompassed reviewing the quality of the course and the lecturers and administrators that delivered that course. So pretty much every question, it was the whole sort of strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree, for quality of the lecturing, quality of the course, quality of the teaching, quality of feedback, and so on and so forth, all of those normal things. And I personally can't remember anything to do with mental health on those. Obviously, it might not be something that the actual department, they obviously want feedback regarding the course. They want to make the course as good as possible, which is fully understandable. But I don't think that was mentioned in any of those surveys. Like I said, I might be completely wrong. I genuinely can't quite remember, but I don't think there was.
The fact that we have to think about it, that's not good enough, because
Absolutely.
you should know that you've been asked them questions.
Yep. Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting a survey regarding the quality of your course. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And of course, there was always a box where, like, oh, if you have any extra comments, you could write them here. And obviously, if someone was concerned that there was lack of support for mental health, or mental health wasn't included in the survey, or anything like that, they could have written it there. But that's obviously speaking hypothetically.
It's true, because it seems to be like a lot of monetary incentives all the time, but it's a bit, I don't know. I'm doing marketing, and that's quite a bit basic, if you get what I mean. Like that's kind of tactics used many years ago. Like, you think there'd be some kind of greater offering or incentive kind of thing. Doesn't have to be monetary all the time, Do you think that's justifiable, like 9,250, or do you think we should receive some kind of reduction in the fee that we're paying? So I'm going to ask our BK first.
It's obviously not justifiable. Like, if you were to give me, if I was to say, if a bailiff was to come to my house right now and demand £9,250 in cash, first of all, I'll think, where the hell can I get that money from? Number two, that's a lot of money. When you actually think about it, it's so much money. Like, I've done online courses before that were of value to me, learning JavaScript, learning C++, they were completely free. And I did it in my own time, self-learning courses I did. And with university, there's this philosophy that you don't get the value of the course until you put your effort into it. So you might be taught by the best teachers. You might go to, I don't know, Warwick or Cambridge or Oxford. You might be taught by the best teachers. But unless you actually go through the resources, research, do your assignments, do your homework, complete it to a decent standard, you will not get the best out of your course. Every student has this price tag on their head where, okay, £9,250, but not every student makes the most out of it. Not every student goes to university with the intention of getting the first class certification. Not everyone goes to university with the intention of completing this assignment doing the assignment as soon as they get it. They do the assignment 2 days before and hope to get a 2-1, just to scrape a 2-1. I feel like we should have a breakdown of like what the fees are spent on. £70 goes towards teaching, £80 goes towards, I don't know, facilities that are available to you, like the hub, like I don't know, the library, etc., having access to all these things, because we don't know we don't know the breakdown. We don't know whether £1,000 could be spent on a facility that could help us, like maybe access to I don't know, careers advisors or whatever. That's just an example. Or, you know, something that actually, or boot camps, you know, having, like, for example, like £1,000 from my student finance could be spent on on a summer boot camp, you know, how to program in a language I've never programmed before, or learning industry standard programming languages that could set me apart from other people from other universities. You know, I could have that on my CV. I could go into an interview saying, okay, I've done a boot camp before. This is what I learned. These are the projects I created. I learned how to use GitHub properly. I use GitHub to collaborate with people international. That's going to sound good, isn't it? So that's a really good example of boot camp, something that would be useful for my course. You know, we could have an option to say, okay, you can spend £1,000 on this on your course, choose one, just like the Advantage course we had at university, but having like a list of courses that actually you have to pay for. Does that make sense? So I feel like I've been massively let down, because that all that money could have been spent on something that can actually add enormous value to myself. Where if I was actually able to complete a boot camp that I paid for from my student finance money or tuition fee, then I could have developed myself even more. Because depending on the ranking, that affects the level of teaching. So if I go to a university that's ranked maybe 89th in the complete university guide, the level of teaching in that university will be different to a university that's ranked 5th or 4th. So yeah, that's just what I think personally. Because I can't just go to the council and say, can you account for what my £9,250 has gone to? He's not going to tell me, you know, where that money has gone towards. You know, so there's this kind of hidden agenda. There's this kind of like no man's land that no one really knows where the money is going towards. We're not kept in the loop. I think students should be made more aware of where the money is going towards. You know, because when you go to a restaurant, you get given the bill. You see, okay, £5 on starters, £10 on dessert, whatever. You know where your money is going. But when we don't know where our money is going, and we have to pay off that as well when we earn over £25,000, you know, it's not really fair, is it? You know.
I was just going to say, I feel like the majority of the fee we pay is indirect fees that don't directly affect us. So it would be on like buildings that will be built for when we leave, you know, equipment that we will actually not have access to because it would be implemented after we've left. So if I think about it, yeah, we got some textbooks, great. We paid, I don't know, a couple £100 for textbooks. That's what's included in the fee. Then I'm thinking to myself, okay, the rest of the learning, majority of it is self-taught. So we learn everything pretty much. You get some PowerPoint slides maybe, you know, and like we only had like during a normal uni term, we had 9 hours of lectures a week. Now that's like far below a working week. Like it's not even half a working week. And we only had 9 hours of lectures. And it's a bit of a cop out to say, oh yeah, you learn for the rest of, you know, your time. And then I know in the pandemic, we've had 4 hours of lectures I know I've had 4 hours anyway of lectures a week, which is again, not good enough. So it just shows that majority of the fees is going to things that don't actually directly affect us kind of thing.
But
So then,
different universities have different levels of facilities. So for example, the facilities that Will has access to would be different to the facilities that someone that attends a university that's like way lower down the league table is for universities. Does that make sense? So the value that Will is getting, the value Will is getting is closer to the 9,250 grand than someone who is lower down the league table. Does that make sense? Because Will has access to a better careers department. He has access to better facilities, for example, better research facilities, for example. So yeah, that's kind of my point I'm making.
well, in the marketing business department at Coventry, there's like a trading floor, so like stocks and shares, that kind of stuff. Me personally, I was in stocks and shares, so that was partially a reason for why I opted to go to Coventry University. Whereas someone who's not interested in stocks and shares, that won't be valuable to them. So they're just going to judge the course solely on the course fundamentals, you know. They're not going to consider that kind of addition on top. And also, of course, nightlife, and like if you if you're going to university like primarily for the course and what the course will give you, then you know certain people would pick Coventry, but then Coventry's nightlife isn't as good as universities such as Bristol or Manchester, for example. So then, you know, it all depends on the individual. But I would say Coventry's marketing course is a pretty good course. I would say overall, I learned quite a few things. I'd say mainly on the third year, I learned the majority of the information that I've upheld. Um, but yeah, I would recommend Coventry's marketing, but I don't know how that compares to other universities because I only had one experience, you know. So again, it all depends on the individual, and of course, location is a massive part of it, as we've seen. So there might be a better course closer to whoever is interested in going and doing marketing.
In terms of the cost, I think it does depend on the course. I think certain courses obviously cost a lot more to run than others. So, for example, mine, I mean, I have no idea of the costs of these things personally, but I don't think I'd be too far off in saying that my degree in a sort of biology, you know, working in labs, it probably costs a lot more than, say, you know, more reading and literature based degrees, if you know what I mean. So, you know, throughout my dissertation, which lasted 7 weeks in the wet lab, you know, we used loads of reagents, loads of equipment, lots of like disposable stuff. Obviously, you have to think in terms of like electronics as well. You know, you're running fume hoods, you're running incubators, you're running all microscopes, you know, all sorts of equipment. You're running the autoclave to sterilize everything. You've got all of the safety features in place, which use, you know, electricity and things like that. You know, and then you've got all of the laboratory staff and health and safety stuff that's in place. You know, you've got a flow cytometer, which is a hefty piece of kit. Those things cost hundreds of thousands of pounds for one flow cytometer. So expensive, you know, and all this specialist equipment, and it must tally up to so much. I don't personally know any figures whatsoever, but you know, I can't imagine. I don't think I'm too far off in saying that probably costs more than a student on the same degree as me who chose to do a critical review dissertation rather than a wet lab, you know. And I feel like there's probably some degrees out there that cost more than £9,250 to run 1 year's worth, but then there's probably loads of degrees that cost a lot less than £9,250 to run a year, and it sort of offsets each other. And like I've said, and something that's happened with Aston University recently, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's talk that Aston University are going, or they are going to, I'm not actually 100% sure, close down one of their departments, and it's the languages and I want to say it's like their languages and humanities and history department, or it's something along those lines. I know it's languages and a couple other things, and they're actually talking about closing that department down. And just straight up, and I've seen loads of posts, you know, on LinkedIn and from people I know from university posting on their social media saying, no, don't close it. You know, we studied here, we love this department, we want to keep going, we want other people to experience the same degrees as us. And what reason really would they have for closing this down other than money? You know what I mean? And I don't know the full details, but you know, it's just an example. So it really does depend on the course, I think. And as it's already been mentioned, it depends on location as well. You know, some places are more expensive to live than others. And yeah, but I think it is based a lot more on the degree itself. Obviously, in an ideal world, as Nathaniel said, it would be free, as with many other.
Well, in Germany, you have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's countries all across Europe that have free university, no tuition fees at all. And that would be absolutely fantastic. I'm sat here right now, and the problem is it's a little bit deceptive in the sense that you never actually see the money. It just goes on to debt, doesn't it? I'm sat here right now, I've graduated, I'm working full time, I'm managing my finances as best I can, but I sort of, most of the time I often forget that I'm tens of £1,000s in debt. You know what I mean? And it's just the way it works. And there's no way in the immediate term we can change that. And if you do want to go to university and study your subject of choice and expand your knowledge and improve your career prospects, that is the cost of it. And there's not much we can change about that in the immediate term. And as one example of many things I'm sure we could talk about for hours on end, we've spoken about mental health a fair bit in this. And that's another thing that logistically to get it set up at every university, it's going to cost money. And if, say, the government and the university minister and all the universities collaborated and said, right, we've got let's say, for just as an example, throwing it out there, a system was developed where they could create a point of service mental health system based at every single university, and it worked. Let's say, for argument's sake, it worked, but your tuition fees are now going to be £10,500 a year. Would you agree? Would you disagree? Does it actually cost that much? Are they paying that so they can further improve it down the line? The money isn't always immediately spent. It's sometimes saved for future investment. And it's an impossible problem because we don't know the full details. We don't have, as IBK said, a receipt of where our money goes, if you know what I mean. And if, as we've said about student surveys, if included on that student survey, they went, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like the prospects of being able to see where all of your money goes? I think 99% of students in the UK would put 9 or 10. I think everybody would want to see that. I don't see why you wouldn't want to see that. And I think it's something that, again, should definitely be considered, But yeah, I think it really does depend on the degree. Some degrees cost more than others. I'm sure that's absolutely true. But I think the most important thing with university is all of the extra stuff on the side. So you have your course, you have your lectures, you have your practicals, and you have your exams. That's absolutely fine. But I think it's all the things on the side that make university what it is. So it's the social stuff, it's the library, it's the support services, it's all of the societies and clubs, it's all of the green spaces you have on your university, it's all of the fun stuff that you do on the side, it's your flatmates. That's what makes university what it is. And I think that's one of the selling points. A lot of people go to university for that stuff. As I've said, I went to university for my course. I absolutely loved my course, but there's some people who will go for the social aspects while studying on the side, whereas some people would go for the studies while socializing on the side. It also, all different people prioritize different things, of course. And obviously universities have to try and find this balance between studies and everything else that comes with it. And, there's always, I feel like there will always be something that's lacking that universities can improve on. We've spoken about mental health. There's always something that places can be improving upon. And I think in terms of a pandemic, that list is only going to be bigger this year. And I think it's going to be a massive challenge for universities to tackle every issue that has arisen when they return to normality in the wake of the pandemic. Definitely.
I just want to say, we talk about the tuition fees and whether it's too much. I mean, this is a business. We have to sort of realize it is a business, and these universities are competing for the most students, hence the more income they get from us, which we borrow from the government as well. And it's really interesting because I know the UK, I mean, every country, we're all in debt. UK is in debt, trillions of pounds in debt with other countries. And the financial model is so complex and complicated. How we're still borrowing loans off the government and we're walking away with a large amount of debt on our hands. And, we have to earn a certain amount to pay the debt off as well. And yeah, it's just so you've got the market, that is the universities, and the selling points, the nightlife, the studying, and then we also got the loans we have to borrow from the government, which in turn we have to pay back if we can, because we have to go get jobs, and that's not easy as well. So yeah, it's such a complicated model, which it's going to take a while to find that optimum of what works best for all parties, I'd say.
Do you think that all uni should charge the same fee of like majority uni should charge 9,250, or do you think it should depend on the university and the course? So you see some like variance in the fees, because that would definitely change demand as well. Like if a university's cheaper but lower down the ranking, someone might go, well, actually, I think that course will give me the tick in the box, which is I've graduated, but I don't incur such a hefty fee, and that might actually get lower down universities higher up the popularity, if you get what I'm saying.
I think so. I'm going to jump in. I think that this is the issue with different universities charging different tuition fees. The problem that comes with that is that there's people out there who will always cheap out on stuff, if you know what I mean. Not the nicest way of putting it, I suppose, but there's always people who will pick a cheaper option if it's available. And then I think at that point, that's when employers, especially big corporations and big companies, will start differentiating and saying, sure, you have the degree required for this job, but did you get it from this university or this university? If so, we don't want to hire you. And that's when I think that people who maybe come from more disadvantaged backgrounds, who will naturally gravitate towards cheaper options purely because of their upbringing, will then suffer more in the long term, and I just think that will cause more class division, if you know what I mean. I know it's difficult to word it. I feel like I haven't worded that in the best way.
I know what you mean. It's true.
I think because there's the same arbitrary tuition fee for every single university, there's no standard in terms of employers judging you on which university you went to. Because no matter whether I went to biology, whether I went to Aston for biology, whether I went to a top uni like Cambridge or Oxford or anywhere else, no matter where I went to, I would still graduate with a degree in biology. I would have a degree in biology to my name. It doesn't particularly matter at the end of the day where I went to an employer anyway. I still learned biology for 3 years and graduated. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if we then start charging different values, that's when people who come from more advantaged backgrounds will gravitate towards more expensive options, and people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds will naturally gravitate to cheaper options. This not necessarily applies to everybody, of course. And then, as I've mentioned, employers can start differentiating, especially big companies which hire the biggest number of people. And I just think that would further divide the classes, if you know what I mean. I just think even though tuition fees, a lot of students will tell you that tuition fees are extortionate. And, I think most people would agree. I think most people genuinely would agree. I don't think there's a lot of people out there who would say £9,250 isn't enough. Some people might say it's fair enough, but I think the majority of people, especially students, will say that's way too much money for what I'm getting. But at the end of the day, if you start charging different amounts, I think that really opens a can of worms, if you know what I mean. And obviously, it's not just the tuition fees. We have maintenance loans as well, which is the money. It's essentially our spending money. Let's call it what it is. It's our spending money. That's what we use to buy train tickets when we go home. It's what we use to buy food. It's what we use to buy drink. It's what we use to, enjoy a solid social life when we're at university. There's not a lot of students out there who, save their maintenance loan or invest their maintenance loan or anything like that, because it's what people use to live, and it's especially, again, people from disadvantaged backgrounds, they get a bigger maintenance loan. We all know this. And if we then go to tuition fees, if, say, someone from a disadvantaged background who naturally chooses a cheaper option, do they then get the same amount of maintenance loan, or do they get less maintenance loan because they're going to cheaper university? And it opens so many queries and so many different questions that I think not charging variable amounts is just, it would be an absolute nightmare.
Shouldn't the maintenance loans and the well, tuition fees, should they be independent from each other, though, would you say? Or because depending on the location, let's say London or Newcastle or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're separate at the moment. I think if they were combined, it would be. It's a little bit different because tuition. You'd never see the tuition fee money, do you? It's just paid directly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas the maintenance loan, you actually sit. That money appears in your bank account. I think combining the two, I mean, it might work, but it's very difficult to say, really, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. Just thinking, if you live in London, things will be generally more expensive
Of
than,
course,
say,
yeah.
North. So would they charge more tuition fees just to accommodate for that, or and then it should be and then we have a constant price for tuition fees going into universities. Yeah, it's like you say, it's really complex.
It's incredibly difficult to say like this is how it should be. You know, there's always going to be arguments for or against. You know.
Yeah. Exactly.
What's interesting is so does everyone agree then that university fees should remain the same for every university?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you went to Oxford, how much would they charge for English, for example? I don't know.
It's currently the same price as our courses.
Yeah. I'm just gonna research this.
Yeah, go for it. It's interesting actually because I was going to say.
Yeah.
So we all agree on that the university fee should be the same for all universities. Then.
I mean, we talk about fees. Can you imagine if you were an overseas student? Can you imagine how much you'd be paid?
So they pay a lot more, don't they?
Well, if you want to.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
So for Oxford, for example, if you wanted to study fine art, annual course fees for overseas, including EU, £31,230
per year.
Wow, that's a lot.
31,000 annual.
Annual.
I mean, for a 3-year course, you're talking, you know, you're closing in on 100 grand there.
My goodness.
Yeah. So we all here in the UK, we're all complaining about student fees. It could be worse if we're.
Could be worse. It's true.
Then the international students have to pay not only more for the course, but they got to pay for. We talk about like train tickets and bus tickets. They got to pay for plane tickets. There's even more money on top of that, isn't it?
Yes. It's interesting how now once you've gone through uni, it's fun to see things
reflecting on.
Reflecting. Yeah, because before, and I'm sure the current generation that are finishing A levels, they're not thinking about, oh, this is too much. They're thinking, which university is the best? Can I go to this one? Yes. Or let's go to Leeds, for example, or Oxford. So it's interesting.
Can I ask you guys a question? So with the experience you have now of university and your experience and the knowledge you have now, if you were to send a message to yourself in year 13 when you're filling in your UCAS application, would you still make the same decision you made, or would you take a gap year, or would you do something else? What would your decisions be? Would your decisions be the same with the knowledge you have today?
Good question.
I think my decision would have personally been the same. I do feel like I got the value out of my degree. I feel like I've been in my job 9 months now, and I feel like I do use knowledge and skills I gained at university almost on a daily basis. I think it's definitely not far off a daily basis. I think in my situation, yeah, I would tell myself, yeah, go for it. You're making the right decision. I would expect, however, more people would tell themselves no than yes to that question. I think if you were to ask all students that question, I would estimate 70% would say I'd have done something differently, possibly even more. You know, me personally, I was pretty happy with how mine went overall. I think following on from that as well, I think now that T levels are a thing, university admissions are going to go, speaking relatively in terms of numbers, I think university admissions will go down now that T levels are a thing, because a lot of people who go to university don't leave with any practical experience, and especially with certain courses fail to provide practical experience. And I think T levels will give people opportunities straight away. So obviously throughout A levels, you have to do your university application, you have to plan it all, you have to sort your student finance. Looking back at it, it's not too much work, but in the moment, that felt like a lot of stuff to sort out. You know, for someone doing A levels who's never really done like any big applications for anything like that, like it felt like a lot of work. It felt like a lot to do.
You have to get your parents involved as well.
Yeah, and it's a massive decision. It massively impacts your future and your future financial position and so on and so forth. And I think now that T levels are an option, I think university admissions will definitely go down, because people will be offered on-the-job experience alongside learning. You get physical experience, you get connections in the industry in whatever you choose to enter, and that's that. You're then working away. You've got some income, you've got some connections, you've made some friends. You know, you can get yourself set up on LinkedIn and so on, and you know, the world's your oyster. And then you don't have to pay any tuition fees, you don't have to pay any maintenance loans, you don't go into any debt. You know, and it doesn't take 3-4 years. You know, simple as that. And I think T levels will be massively successful, because I think everyone's going to choose them.
I would say the main reason people go to university now is probably the fear of missing out, because everyone has this some people have this party experience or this great experience of uni, or you might have met your partner there or had the best clubbing nights of your life, for example. But if apprenticeships were built in a completely different way that gives you that fun, it promotes the enjoyment side of it as well as the practical side of it, I think they would definitely be a lot more popular than in comparison to uni.
I think after a few years and reviews and feedback and the value of T levels becomes apparent, I think definitely we'll start to see a trend of more people going towards T levels, if schools push them enough. In my school and my sixth form, I do feel like we were pushed to go to university, and I think a lot of people did want to do university anyway. I personally did want to do university, but I feel like even though there were other options available, university was definitely the option that was, I would say, it was encouraged the most. We definitely got given the most information regarding university. I feel like if T levels are pushed along as much as that is, I think, as you say, over the course of a few years, when we start to get some statistics, I think T levels will be very, very successful. Yeah.
When it shouldn't be that way at all. It should be some people are better suited to uni, some people are better suited to apprenticeships. And you should be given information without the stigma attached to it of what is better for you. And no one's smarter than, obviously, some people are going to be smart at certain academic subjects, but other people might be better at practical skills. You know, there should be more of a level playing field, I think. Yeah, I think that was a good discussion.
I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that.